Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Comics and Coffee, starting your day out the nerdy way. I am Bobby Shortle, and I'm here with Nikki Alfaro.
Good morning, guys.
So, good morning, Nikki. It's what, 3 weeks in a row we've done this? 2 weeks in a row? Something like that.
2 weeks in a row, I
2 weeks
think.
in a row.
Now.
I think that's our record so far, so um, we'll see what happens in the coming weeks. But yeah, so we got once again, DC hit us with some news. Some relatively big news, and there was a couple things hit over the week as well. But of course, the first and foremost in everyone's mind, Nikki, I think everyone's talking about, what color do you think the dress is?
Oh, God. No. It's the slothpocalypse. I refuse. But I keep on seeing white and gold. I don't know what that says about my eyesight, but
Do you think that you're wearing white and gold right now? Because what you're wearing right now is the same color as the dress.
blue and black.
Yeah. So no, we're not gonna spend a lot of time talking about the dress. Though, if you think it's interesting. I read the only interesting thing about it was reading color theory about why people saw what they saw.
Exactly. That's the only thing I read, and then I had to turn off Twitter for a little bit.
Well, I during the day, the whole llama thing happened, right? Everyone was talking about the freaking llamas.
I didn't understand that. Everybody just started talking about llamas. I'm like, all right.
And so I was like, and so I saw that thing happen, and then I was like off Twitter for a little bit, and then I came back on like 3 or 4 hours later, and there was this dress thing happening, and I somehow equated it in my brain. I was like, does it have to do with the llama thing? Because there's no way there's been two like gigantic things to happen back to back in the same day.
Net neutrality. So
Yep.
I just find it hilarious that it all happens in the same day. Like this is the internet.
Yes. And the thing that people talked least about was the net neutrality. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, so let's talk about some comic book stuff, though. Another thing that came out in the evening yesterday, I believe, was that CW is developing what is essentially a superhero team-up show to feature characters from Arrow and The Flash. The two characters that are definitely going to cross over are going to be Brandon Routh's Adam, his Ray Palmer character, and Wentworth Miller, Leonard Snart, who is Captain Cold, obviously. But one of the more interesting aspects of it was that they also announced the actress who played Sarah Lance on Arrow as being a member of the cast of this show.
Lazarus Pit.
Right, which is very interesting because, guys, I'm sorry, we're going to spoil a little bit of Arrow for you if you haven't been keeping up on it. Her character is no longer with us on Arrow. So it's very interesting that kind of thing would be happening now. That she would be getting her own part on that show. So the question people are asking is, do they think it's her playing the same character, or maybe they're just bringing her back to play someone else?
I honestly don't think it's the second one, just because their universe is so interconnected with each other, that it just doesn't make sense for them to cast her as a new character.
Yeah. Makes sense. Katie Lotz is her name, by the way. I didn't want to not get her name before we talked about it. So that's the idea. But I mean, other than that, what do you think of this idea of basically having, like, Blob / team up as our ongoing series?
First, Sarah was my absolute favorite. So when certain thing happened towards the beginning of the season, I was heartbroken. So when she was announced to co-star in this, I was just really, really excited. And then I thought about it, and I was like, but what is the show going to be about?
Yeah.
Because it just sounds like a mashup. I mean, I get the Atom. I get Victor Garber, who's like half Firestorm. And I get Canary. But Captain Cold, like, I don't know where he's going to fit in. I don't know if it's going to be a kind of like Justice League versus Flash's Rogues Gallery or an Injustice thing. But what's exciting is that 3 DC characters yet to be on either the Flash or the Arrow are going to be in it. So those are exciting possibilities.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that's exciting to me is that um, what I think Arrow and Flash have done so well is to create these secondary or supporting characters that are from the DC universe and create them so well and make them vital pieces of the puzzle. The unfortunate thing is that the shows are called Arrow and the Flash, so at the end of the day, it's going to be about those two characters more than it's going to be about these other characters. And at a certain point, those characters are going to outgrow their usefulness on the show because they're brought on the show to fulfill certain plot lines and character arcs that relate to the main characters of the show. And so
that's why I don't really get Ray Palmer. I mean, I like him.
Mm-hmm.
He's very charismatic and he's such a light character. But in the context of the show, he's the odd man out, and I just never understand his place in it. So I'm excited for him to get his own show.
Yeah, I mean, I think they brought him in as a big part would to be the kind of new love interest for Felicity in a lot of ways to kind of draw that away from the Oliver stuff on the show. But I also think that I think they probably had something like this in mind, or in like the pie in the sky sort of thought for a while. Mm-hmm. That's the sense that I get, right? That you don't introduce characters like the Atom or like Firestorm on the Flash, which they've done very well. Firestorm especially.
Yeah, Firestorm was amazing. I've never been so interested in the character.
Yeah, right. So and the cool thing about it was they did it the way that it's done in the comics, right? Like that's or the way that they come together is different in the show, but the way that they deal with each other and the fact that they're two people melded into one, and that kind of, especially near the end of this last episode where you started having Martin Stein's voice just kind of out there in Ronnie Raymond's head. That's very much from the comics. If you read the comics, that's what it looks like. They put like a little shadow picture of Martin Stein up, and he's talking to Ronnie Raymond. So I felt that in the show, and I want to see those characters do stuff. I want to see them be able to have storylines, but I don't want to see time taken away from Barry or from Oliver, those main stories, or the main cast of either of those things, because the cast of those shows are big enough already. I think Arrow's supporting cast especially they have to kind of like take turns at focusing who they're going to focus on, for a week or a couple of weeks.
Especially since they do flashbacks as well.
Yes.
Like I just feel like there's too much sometimes because they have to balance that with the flashbacks. So it kind of annoys me. But who do you think is going to be one of the 3 DC characters, or if?
That's a good question. That's a really good question. I mean, if this had been a year ago, it would have been, I think, easier to pick somebody because you could have gone with someone that was on a more grounded level, in the kind of the Arrow universe. But now with the Flash, they've kind of opened it all up to this crazy amount of it could really be anything. Because if you're going to do Firestorm, you can basically do anything at that point.
I'm hoping for maybe Animal Man or Vixen.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I didn't never thought of Animal Man. Animal Man, I think, would be a really good pick for that. Vixen as well. Is Vixen one they're doing the like animated thing for? They're doing an animated.
Animated something.
Yeah, like an animated spin-off show that's set in that universe. So that's an absolute possibility. Obviously, I think if you look at like kind of the Justice League characters, I guess, and you look at that space, I mean, there are people like Dr. Fate, who I think would be interesting, but that would start introducing magic and such to the universe, which that they haven't done yet.
Zatanna?
Zatanna would be amazing. I would love that. I'm trying to think who else. I would like to see, but the thing is, like, we don't know what their plan is with all these different shows they're putting out. There are plenty of characters kind of in the Batman universe, like Batgirl or something like that I would love to see that I think would fit, but with the Titan show coming, I don't know if that was going to be like a possibility.
And with Gotham.
Yeah.
We don't know how much they're allowed to have.
Yeah. Hawkman or Hawkgirl, I think would be awesome. Maybe this is where we get to see, if it happens, we get to see the John Diggle is really John Stewart and is the Green Lantern.
Ooh, yeah, that would be cool.
Because we talked about a couple weeks ago on the main podcast, and people said, well, that'd be awesome, but he wouldn't really fit. He would kind of disavow Ollie's place if he could just do whatever he wanted to do. So I think putting him in a different show with characters like Firestorm and stuff like that, I think might change it up and help things out a little bit there. But we'll have to see. I think it's a cool idea. I think it's a better idea than going, okay, we're going to do an Adam show. Even though I think Brandon Routh could absolutely support his own television show. I think he's got, you said, enough charisma to do it. But I don't want to just see. I want to see other characters and as many characters as possible, and this would allow it to do that. And who knows what they're going to do with the villains? With Snart, the thing about it is that the Flash Rogues are always kind of, they're villains, but they're more villains like we want to rob stuff. We don't really want the world to end. That's kind of like their whole deal. So
Yeah.
it leaves room for like a team up if there's some sort of something going on there. But cool news. I mean, are you a fan of Arrow and the Flash?
I was a fan of Arrow. In recent episodes, I haven't really been a fan just because Oliver is quite unlikable, at least for me. The Flash, though, is incredible. I really love that they embrace the whole superhero idea.
Yeah.
But I will keep watching Arrow if that means Sarah's going to come back at some point.
When the Flash first started, I had that feeling, right, that like, oh, I wish Arrow was more like this. I wish it was lighter. I wish it embraced this stuff more. But as it's gone on, I've kind of come to appreciate that I get this one type of show here and this other type of show here, and they kind of balance themselves out for me. It's like whatever mood I'm in, there's a show that I'm going to want to watch first, and then most likely after I watch one of them, I'll then be in the mood to watch the other one. So I enjoy that, and I like it when characters kind of go into like an unlikable place sometimes, and I'm just done with the whole Ollie Felicity thing. I just want that to just be done. That's all.
Same.
I want them to once and for all just end it and move on, because it started as like something that was hinted at and then something they fully addressed, and I feel like it's been almost a whole season that they've just been playing this kind of I would be with you if I could kind of game. So we'll have to see what happens there. Another big piece of news that happened: Matt Fraction and Kelly Sue DeConnick. I don't know what that word was that I just said. Still the morning. Struck a deal with NBC Universal, a first look deal to develop their comic properties and other properties, if they still come up with stuff, into other forms of media, most likely television, obviously. The first thing that is on the docket is a Sex Criminals TV show. No creative talent, nothing yet, but that is the first thing announced. So what do you think about this, Nikki?
I am so excited for this. I knew at some point they were going to work together, but for something this big, it's just wow. I never could have seen it coming. At least not in like this immediate future. And then all of a sudden, bam, we're getting Sex Criminals on TV, maybe.
Yeah. I think they said definitely it's going to be some sort of. It's going to be a serialized program. Whatever station it is going to be on, we don't know. I wouldn't jump to conclusions for anybody to think that it will be on NBC just because Universal owns NBC, because production companies produce TV shows all the time that end up on other stations.
And there's no way that it wouldn't be on like AMC or HBO or something of the like.
Yeah. I think you're probably looking at a Netflix type situation. It would be the first thing I would think of. But the Deadline broke the story, and I love the first line: comic book power couple Matt Fraction and Kelly Sue DeConnick are venturing into television with a 2-year overall deal at Universal TV. Under the pact, the married duo will adapt some of their comic books as well as original TV series concepts. They also plan to use their milk-fed criminal masterminds production company as a TV launchpad for other comic creators' IP. We're always excited to usher in fresh voices to the television space, and we couldn't be more thrilled to partner with Matt and Kelly Sue, a fantastic pair whose award-winning comics are deeply realized as they are entertaining. That's Universal TV Executive Vice President Bella Bajaria. Um, yeah. So, and the first one would be sex criminals, which who knows when that will happen and how they'll do it. But I'm assuming if they have this much control over it, that they're not going to let it happen in like any sort of way that they wouldn't be happy with.
I'd be more excited for Bitch Planet. I'd want to see that play out.
Hmm. Well, who knows? You very well could. Nothing to say you won't. So yeah, that's cool. I mean, I think it's really cool. Who knows what's going to come of it? But I love sex criminals. It's like one of my favorite things in the world. So to have that coming to another medium and get more of that, I'm all for it. And it's a weird thing, right? Because we kind of work in this space, and it's a very kind of small community, right? So you end up talking to and meeting a lot of the people who write the books, who draw the books. There's a lot of access to those people. And
the news broke on Wednesday, and Chip was signing at the sale, and I saw it, and then I went up to him like, "Congrats!"
So that's weird because that would never happen, right? It doesn't happen in other media spaces. Stephen Amell isn't like hanging out at your local store, and they're like, "Oh, they announced a spin-off show for Arrow," and you were part of this big announcement, the whole kind of thing. So. And it's really weird because, I've met Kelly Sue a few times. I've talked to her several times. And now she's going to be like, a millionaire who creates TV shows. And it's a weird thing to have happen. It's sort of surreal to feel that close to something that happens that big. But yeah, it's cool. I mean, they're the great voices. And the more power they have, I think the better. One of the other things happened too. I don't know if you saw this, Nikki, but Catwoman was confirmed as bisexual in the comics.
I can't wait to read the trade. I tried to read it monthly, but I don't think there was enough there for me. I mean, I understood where I liked the art and the story was fine, but I wasn't really following Batman Eternal.
Mm-hmm.
So I just didn't know where Catwoman was at. And she wasn't even Catwoman. She's like the head of a mob family. So I kind of just want to read all the bad stuff all together. But I'm excited.
Yeah, I had the same issue with Catwoman, actually. I wasn't caught up on like what was going on. And I thought that the art was good, and I thought the story seemed interesting and kind of a mob sense. But didn't really hit with me because I wasn't at that place with Catwoman. I was still looking for a Catwoman book where she was kind of running around, jumping on rooftops. And that wasn't what they were giving. So, but despite that, I mean, it made like very small waves this week. Not as big as stuff usually happens, obviously, in our community. But I find it interesting because when I was a teenager, I had a very narrow view of like what bisexual was and what that term meant, but I always thought I would always joke around and say like it's just there's no such thing as bisexual. It's just people being selfish. That's what I used to say, which is obviously not true. I've come to learn much more as we get older, right? That people self-identify as many things, and it's no
bisexuality is such a wide term.
Yeah,
I didn't even understand it when I started to identify as bisexual. I didn't even understand how big that term is. So yeah, it's amazing to see. And going back to the Sarah Lance being on the show, that would be another CW show because recently the 100 has now a bisexual lead. CW will have another show with a bisexual lead if it's Sarah Lance.
Right. It's interesting, right? I sometime in the future, none of this will be news anymore, right? It'll just be this is the lead of the character. But right now, we're still going through growing pains with this stuff, where it's obvious that Genevieve Valentine is not doing it as some sort of flashy move, right? It's just who she considers the character to be, and they're going forward from there, which I like. I just thought it because I saw some people that were upset on Twitter, not because she was bisexual, because people were calling it out as some sort of just like flash move, like that it's not a realistic or acceptable way to be. It's just something that people use as sort of like a ploy, which I'm sure has been done in the past. But I like that all ranges are starting to get represented in that way.
Also
So
with Catwoman, there wasn't really anything. It wasn't like with Robin dying. Like they didn't release it. They didn't release a kiss like 5 days beforehand and be
right.
like, pick up Catwoman, ladies
Mhm.
kissing.
Yeah.
Like I didn't even hear about it until last night.
Yeah.
That's like the day that I saw my Catwoman issues at a used bookstore. I couldn't even catch up if I wanted to.
Oh man, oh man. One of the other things that came out, speaking of in the Batman verse, Secret Origins #10, which Secret Origins is a book that's been coming out obviously for about a year now, and has focused on a lot of origins of characters in the New 52. And it's a book that I've largely ignored since the first issue. I read the first issue, and they kind of tread familiar territory, and I kind of just was like, I don't need to read the origin of Batman and Superman again. It's not really what I need. But this week, they did 3 characters. It was Batgirl, Firestorm, and Poison Ivy. The 2 notable, most notable ones I think are Batgirl and obviously Poison Ivy was a great story as well. The Batgirl story, I think ever since the New 52 started, obviously the Oracle debate has raged in the comic book community. DC has never been completely clear about what she did when she was in the chair in this universe. You know, there has never been any really clear Oracle. There's been hints, but never any clear designation of was she ever Oracle? Did she do the things that she did in the other comics? Is there some sort of squished continuity that shows her as this person? And I think Secret Origins attempts to address that in some ways. What did you think of Secret Origins #10, Nikki?
Um, I was really excited to pick it up because obviously more Batgirl and also Cedric doing Poison Ivy is something that I didn't know I needed until I heard it. um, I liked it. I didn't know what I was expecting with the Batgirl origin, but seeing it all connect to what's happening right now in Batgirl, it's pretty exciting. And yeah, I was in the camp of like I really love this new direction of Batgirl, so I didn't really have the whole like where's Oracle? I miss the old Barbara Gordon, but it does address some interesting things. But I didn't know if it was too on the nose or actually really clever, or I don't know if I'm just because I'm so biased.
Right, right. Well, what I thought was fascinating was this idea, this kind of switch that happens in it, where you kind of realize that it's so funny because I pick his name up a lot because he's my favorite writer, but it's a very Grant Morrison conceit that happens in this book because you find out that it's not really Barbara narrating the book. It's the implant in Barbara's spine that gave her legs back that's narrating the book. And that sounds really stupid on the surface, but the point of it is that it's this new technology where they basically are putting another mind in the disconnected place of her nervous system so that her legs can work again. It's very comic booky and crazy and out there, and her memories only come to the point though where she gets her legs back. So this part of her consciousness doesn't recognize herself from the New 52 on, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Only recognizes that pre-stuff. And we don't really get any Oracle stuff, but we definitely get the hint that it existed and that it exists somewhere. That there's some part of Barbara that was Oracle and did what Oracle did. And it's just maybe not this Barbara, maybe not, it's more of a contextual or metaphorical, Oracle. But those kind of questions I thought were fascinating. That's not what I expected at all reading it. I expected it to be super cut and dry, like this is who she is, this is what she did. And then reading it, I was like, this is open for interpretation. It has layers, it has like crazy ideas, which...
Yeah, the narrative actually became chilling at some point, and that was amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did really like the Poison Ivy story as well. I thought it was really good. Poison Ivy is an interesting character because there's like a very strong contingent of people on the internet, especially who like super love Poison Ivy.
I didn't
Um,
know I was a part of that contingent until like a year ago. All of a sudden, I'm like, I look at Poison Ivy, I'm like, yeah, she's actually really cool.
and she is a really cool character. It just
She hasn't been given the chance to consistently be that really cool character. I think
right.
we see like little hints here and there. Maybe she's kind of um, like really cool in Harley Quinn, or I don't know if you've read Gotham City Sirens, but up to a point with like Paul Dini writing her, she was really consistent.
Mhm.
um,
I guess for me it was always just like she's a Batman villain, so I was like she's a really interesting Batman villain, but I never desired more, I guess, than that from her, than just a when she showed up in Batman books, she would be interesting and cool, and one of those villains that was a villain but not really a villain. Like she was only a villain because her ideals were so in competition with what Bruce's and Batman's were, you know.
I just love how she just doesn't care about human beings, really, except for maybe Harley.
Mhm. That's really funny. That's really really funny. Yeah. So, but I thought the story was cool, and the Stephen Sedgwick art was gorgeous.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, they sort of reestablish her origin and stuff like that. She's going to be in the new Suicide Squad book. She's going to be a member of that when it relaunches after Convergence. So she'll have some sort of spotlight for a while there, at least, with that. Uh, and really quickly, Nikki, this is our shared book of the week on the main podcast, so I'm not going to talk about it, but you reviewed it for the website.
Yes, I did.
Spider-Gwen #1. What did you think?
I wasn't in love with it, and
You're fired, Nikki.
when I read it, I'm like, oh no, I didn't like it. Am I gonna be kicked out of some secret club that I didn't know I was a part of? Um, Honestly, for me, there was some pacing issues. Um, I also thought the Vulture being there was random. Um, there was some cool cameos, which I'm really excited to see. Like, I'm more excited for the universe than I am for the current plot.
Hmm.
I think a lot of that goes to her not having enough interactions with the people in her life as Gwen Stacy. Um, and I wrote in my review, but I was concerned that at the moment she felt like a gender bent Peter.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's just me. I still like the art. I'm still gonna read it.
Yeah, it definitely didn't get off the ground running like I think Silk did last week.
Mhm.
Definitely. But I don't want to say too much because I don't want to be repeating myself for later in the week. Um, we had a couple people write in with a hashtag talking Java, and when Beth said, hasn't been a TV character I've been so devastated over dying in a long time like Sarah Lance. CW team up spinoff discuss. We obviously did already, but I just wanted to, we got your message. At Yella_Ghost on Twitter has two things for us. He says, will you use Post-Convergence and Secret Wars to attempt to cut back on a few comics?
I looked at the list and I thought I would. I'm gonna try, but we'll see. Um, if you guys don't know, I also review comics for the Silver Snail, so I can look through them and see if I'm gonna buy them. And then if I don't wanna like review them, I just put them back.
Mm.
So I have a little bit of leeway.
There's, for me, I mean, obviously it gives you the chance. Obviously, once those books are kind of relaunched or there's new books, it gives you a chance to really seriously look at your pull list and if you have kind of like that collector feeling to be able to cut yourself off because things are starting over at #1, everything is rejiggering, so you're kind of off the hook, I guess, in a little bit of a way for that. For me, really, I've gotten very good about doing that already. Like I've gotten pretty cutthroat about the books that I buy and don't buy anymore. There's a lot of books that I used to get that I just have cut. Avengers, New Avengers, those books like that. They're out of my life, and not because I thought they were bad. It's just they weren't jiving for me 100%, so I cut them out. And so there's possible that the problem with these relaunches is not that I'm going to be cutting books. I'll probably be adding books to my pull list because they're new beginnings for some people. And if they announce really great creative teams, I'm not buying an Iron Man book right now, but maybe I am after the relaunch if it has a really great team on it. I'm not buying the Captain America book. Maybe I am after the relaunch. Stuff like that. I'm not buying Avengers. I will certainly at least pick up at least an arc of the Avengers when it comes back, whatever that version of it's going to be. So I'll actually end up adding books to my pull list after these things are over.
I look at DC and the books that I'm already collecting from DC, like Grayson, Gotham Academy, Batgirl, like nothing's changing with them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think so. I'm already just like keeping them. And then, like, they'd announce Black Canary.
Right.
They're like, there's another book to add. We'll see about Marvel, though.
Yeah, we just don't know. We have no idea yet. So it's really tough to say. I'll definitely be picking up less books during Secret Wars from them than I would have been picking up normally.
Definitely.
I'm going to be picking and choosing more. It's just because the storylines I'll be enjoying are going to be over by that point, and I'll be able to kind of just look around and pick whatever I want to pick out and read them. At Yellow Ghost, Underscore Ghost also wants to know, the new Spider-Man Peter Parker may be ethnic, he says in quotes. What are other MCU characters we haven't seen yet that could fit a different race than normal?
Any of them, I think?
Yeah, pretty much.
For me, it just doesn't really change the character. Like, we look at Iris West. Like, it doesn't really affect her being an intrepid reporter.
No, not at all. The only things that would limit it would be if characters are already certain ethnicities, obviously.
Yeah,
like,
obviously.
Yeah.
Like Shang-Chi.
Yeah, Shang-Chi, like Flash, that might be a little bit weird. It's a little bit off on the scale. If someone's, if there's like a character like Colossus, wouldn't really make sense to do it with.
Yeah, if he wasn't Russian.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure there are black people in Russia, but the majority of people, I'm guessing, are not. So stuff like that, I think it would make less sense than it would. But I think almost any American character, there's not really anything stopping it, unless there's something in that history or something that is specific to that race. The Peter Parker thing, it's absolutely, Dan Slott said on Twitter, is something that essentially is white about Peter Parker, except that he was white when he began. And don't get me wrong, I think sometimes that means something, right? You don't want to just change everybody just to change everybody, but I think that a character like Peter, who's been so well served in his original form over many, 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 many years, it's very, very, I think it makes sense to do something like that. And it's nice if people can say, like, look, that Spider-Man looks like me. Like, that's nice. Captain America might be one that's a little bit tough just because of the time that he's from and kind of that kind of thing. I mean, obviously, there were black soldiers in World War II. That's not something that didn't exist. But if Captain America was supposed to kind of like reflect like what like the Norman Rockwell version of the 1940s was.
But the first Captain America, I think, was black, right? But they didn't really acknowledge him. It was if you read Young Avengers, like the first run, Eli Bradley, his grandfather was the first Captain America, but like they didn't really.
Right. I meant Steve Rogers. I didn't mean like the persona, because I think obviously Sam being Captain America right now, I think is awesome.
But
it's the Steve Rogers aspect of it, because to me he's always been kind of as that Norman Rockwell version of the American like 40s. And but maybe that's wrong too. Maybe shaking that up, that ideal is also a good thing. But just in my mind, that's the only character that really seems to me that I initially wouldn't want to see the change on. But everyone else, I don't think it matters really, unless you can point to something specifically in their history that keeps them that one race. And I think the argument about the other way around is so stupid. Such a stupid argument. Like, well, if they made Black Panther white, people would be really pissed off. Well, yeah, because he's an African king. And there's like 7 good black characters in all of comics. So maybe don't change one of the 7 really good ones over. That would be nice to not do that. But yeah, he's an African king. It's like Luke Cage. Like he was born out of a very certain time period and a very certain influence. You know, that kind of blaxploitation film movement. He was born out of that. So making him white doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But making Johnny Storm black, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Unless you really believe that there aren't stories you can tell from that perspective like that. But yeah, I think anyone can change. It doesn't matter. And as far as like the movie stuff goes, as long as they're good, that's the thing. That's my only thing. Like as long as they're good, I don't care what the hell color or race or gender they are. It doesn't really matter to me. It doesn't matter to me at all. So I don't know. You know, some of my issues with stuff in the comics hasn't even been about the race. Like the Wally West stuff in the Flash. Like he's not Wally West to me. He's not funny. You know, he's not light. He's like really super serious. And Barry's already serious, so I don't need two serious Flashes. That's the kind of stuff that bothers me more than anything else.
I haven't been reading The Flash lately.
It's good. There's nothing wrong with the book. You know, and the direction they've gone in, I think they've done a good job. But I rail against people for saying stuff like this, but I miss like the Jeff Johns or Mark Waid like versions of those characters more than anything. So yeah, that's my problem with the Flash right now in the comics. Speaking of Mark, do you read Daredevil, Nikki?
No, I have like the first volume from Mark Waid's first run, but I've just been kind of like, because it's the hardcover, I've just been like, whenever I see the next ones on sale, I'll pick them up.
Gotcha. Well,
I just kind of want to read them all together.
It's absolutely the best thing in the world to me, and this past issue really played with the ideas of kind of damsel in distress stuff, with you know, because you know Daredevil's whole thing, he's they know who he is, so they're going to come after. They're going to try to go through the people I love to get to me, and I'll put people in danger, and I have to leave them. You know, I have to break up with her, all that kind of stuff. And you know, Foggy is like, she's not just like a sack of meat there to like be you know, she's a person, and she has a decision. And if you said this to her, I bet she would, you know, punch you in the face or whatever and tell you you're being ridiculous. And there's a whole twist in the book where it ends up like the person going after the female character isn't going after her to get to Daredevil. She's going after her because she was the prosecutor who put him away. And she has this really funny line. I'm kind of spoiling it, but she has this really funny line where she goes like, "Oh, I hate it when my enemies try to go through me to get to you." This whole thing is really, really good. And she puts it like, I forgot how she puts it, but she doesn't like not mansplaining, but like dare-splaining or something like that. It was really funny, really, really good. Really played with those ideas. So yeah, but that book is amazing, and Chris Samnee is just like the best in the entire world to me with superhero art. But we covered a lot today on the show, Nikki.
Yes, we did.
We covered a lot.
So much news.
A lot of news, a lot of good stuff to talk about. If you guys want to get in touch with us, please at Talking Comics on Twitter. Use that hashtag Talking Java, and we'll make sure we get to your questions throughout the week. You can find Comics and Coffee now as a podcast on iTunes and on TalkingComicBooks.com. If you go into the podcast section of Talking Comics, there is a special edition banner, and that's where Comics and Coffee is going to live. There's links there to download the MP3 or subscribe on iTunes, whichever way you want to do it. So it's up there for you guys to check out. Please, if you can't listen live and you just want it on your headphones or in your car, this is the way to do it. My personal Twitter is at Bobby Shortle. Nikki.
I am Asian Batgirl.
Awesome. And yes, that's going to do it for Comics and Coffee for this week. Thank you guys so much for starting your day out the nerdy way with us.